All right, how's it going, y'all? So today we're going to be going over 5 reasons why Synology is better than TrueNAS. And this is really going to be focusing on TrueNAS's market. TrueNAS's market and Synology's market actually don't overlap as much as you would expect them to. TrueNAS's real market is massive enterprise deployment, whereas Synology's is medium-sized businesses and small businesses and home users. So there's not a ton of overlap there, but we are going to be specifically talking about 5 things that Synology just does way better that TrueNAS needs to bring in for being effective in these massive deployments. I'm not saying that Synology is fundamentally the right option for people. Anything over 200 terabytes, I currently recommend people go TrueNAS rather than Synology. Even with the petascale project that Synology's got, really being able to go ZFS, you're just going to have the ability to have way more space. These are just going to be 5 things that Synology just does better for these enterprise deployments. It makes them so much easier to administer and use. And we're really going to be focusing on the big clients who have these massive data storage systems that are going and looking at, hey, who should we go with here? Especially if you're focusing on a massive SMB file server, NFS data store for VMs, all these kinds of things going through that. These are 5 features that Synology just does better than TrueNAS. It is in TrueNAS's backyard too of really, these are things that enterprises use and really get a lot of value out of. And so this is where I think TrueNAS could really steal some of these because it makes it so much better. So we're going to be focusing on these massive scale out file systems. We're going to be talking about ones that have massive SMB file servers, NFS data stores for tons of virtual machines, iSCSI as well. All of that we're going to be focusing on here. And so it's not like, oh, hey, they've got Active Backup Business, which honestly is a huge thing that enterprises use, but it's not what TrueNAS is really in the market for. TrueNAS is in the market to be a NAS in the definition of a NAS. Really fast, really low latency, really high scalability file servers. That is what TrueNAS is in the market of. And we're going to talk about 5 things that Synology is just beating them at for these use cases. And to start, we're going to be talking about number 1, and that is LDAP. TrueNAS is technically compatible with an LDAP server, but SMB is not then. So if you run authentication through LDAP, as in you don't have a Windows Active Directory server, you cannot get your users to authenticate via SMB. So you actually have to use a middleman to actually figure out this authentication and add accounts to that. And I think this is a huge miss. There are a ton of companies out there, and especially as stuff's growing on, that are moving away from Windows Active Directory because it is such a pain and it doesn't really work with a dynamic environment. And so having just standard LDAP authentication allows you to use so much more stuff. But TrueNAS does not have the ability to actually authenticate users off of LDAP. It's not their fault necessarily. It's part of the Samba implementation of it, where there's these extra permissions and stuff that are required. But if you look at Synology, Synology can do it. You can add in a LDAP group right here, and those LDAP users are going to be able to authenticate off of the LDAP server in SMB. If you try to do the exact same thing within TrueNAS, if you set up your LDAP server here, you are not going to be able to get your SMB users to sign in, which is a major thing that offices use. This is one really annoying thing because Windows Active Directory is something that is really focused on Windows devices. Whereas LDAP works with so much stuff. It is an open standard that a ton of people use and can simplify your stuff down because Active Directory takes over your entire life if you want to use Active Directory. Whereas LDAP does not. LDAP is just authentication. So I really wish TrueNAS would just steal whatever code Synology added to make it work because it's got so much value for allowing LDAP authentication for SMB users. So that is going to be number 1. Once again, in the massive enterprise market where you've got other forms of authentication other than just Active Directory. Number 2 is going to be Resource Manager. So we're going to go in and we're going to pop open Resource Manager on Synology. And it is leaps and bounds different in terms of ability to understand what is a slow put. The biggest thing I check on whenever I'm trying to figure out what's the bottleneck with a setup is I first come in, check out CPU, Then I can look at my disks here and see, okay, the disks are just slammed doing a bunch of stuff right now. Okay, we can also check the volume. Oh, hey, how's the volume doing? Is it overloaded or is it doing just fine? There's so much stuff here that makes it so much easier, and specifically TrueNAS Scale lost the ability to find disk utilization. So you can't figure out if the entire pool is being slowed down because of one disk or not, which I think is a huge miss. So one of the easiest indicators that I've found for when a disk is about to fail is if you look at its utilization and all the other disks in a pool are hovering around like 30 to 50%, and it's consistently above 90, it's often that disk is the bottleneck for the entire pool and also may just be failing. So it is really valuable to have that look, and you can also start figuring out, hey, am I being slow because my disks are too slow and it just can't keep up? Or am I slow because there's a bottleneck in my network protocol? If your disk utilization is over 80%, then that's probably the bottleneck in your setup. But if it's hovering around 20%, then the bottleneck is probably somewhere else. Really, really, really useful feature for debugging major performance stuff on these massive systems. And TrueNAS Scale lost a lot of it, and even then, it never really had the same level. So if we go into our disk tab, one, we don't see what pools these are associated with or these zvols. And so it becomes really hard to tell what is going on with these, especially when you really have to scroll through every single one of them individually rather than getting an overall summary view. I really like the table that is available right here, and you can also even add in multiple devices and display them directly. I think that makes it a lot easier to read. Here, we also only get two things: overall IO and throughput. We don't get any kind of latency, utilization, or anything like that. And it's only disk based. So we only get to see the actual disk utilization. We do not get to see anything that is like a pool utilization. ZFS has a bit of that, but this is all set up on just the overall system of itself. And you don't get an easy way of telling, hey, is the pool just overloaded and can't do anything more? Or is something else going on when I'm hitting my bottleneck? This is really critical for understanding IOPS. Speaking of IOPS, there's no easy way of telling overall system IOPS. You can't see where your IOPS are at all over here, but you can get a pretty good roll-up view by just looking in this tab. You can not only see disk IOPS, but also volume IOPS, which I think is a huge thing for debugging performance and figuring out what's the cause for a slowdown. You do get good CPU understanding, but that's pretty much it. I really would like them to add back a lot of those features from core into scale, especially since scale, I believe, is going to be the future of TrueNAS in general. And especially really work on getting IOPS and other factors that sysadmins really use all the time, because this information can tell people what they need to do to make it faster. Another one, TrueNAS Scale keeps breaking our metrics. So right here, the reporting tab for our network tab right here has me at 300 gigabytes per second. Multiple updates have changed this and have kept breaking them for different setups. And you lose the ability to understand how much throughput is going on there. It also at times had flipped incoming and outgoing traffic and just made it very hard to read. And I really think the metrics are something that there is a lot of work to be done there, because it can really help an admin who's managing this massive system understand what is going on with it. Okay, so that was number 2. It is the metrics through and through. I really would like to see that better. Number 3 is going to be the addition of a firewall. TrueNAS does not have a built-in firewall, which I think is a pretty strong miss. So yes, you can technically do the majority of stuff you would want to with a firewall, the way it works, but Synology, it has a very easy to implement firewall right here. And I think it makes it a lot better. It allows you to very easily allow specific protocols, allow specific ports to specific things. And so you can say, hey, you can only SSH from these IP addresses. The way you would do a similar thing within TrueNAS is you go into your services tab and you start binding stuff to specific interfaces. So you come in here and you say, hey, I'm only going to allow NFS to run on this specific IP address right here, but you lose a lot of granularity in that. Rather than being able to just control everything on one nice pretty interface, instead you have to run through every single one of these tabs and check everything out and figure out where everything is. But if you've got a firewall implemented, it is so easy. You just look at your firewall and you've got everything in one nice pretty list, and you can do port-based blocking. I really would love to see both of them as options. Yes, it does come with a degree of overhead, but if you write your firewall rules properly, that goes away. It's something I would really like to be able to do easily, because NASs need to be on the network that they are serving. NFS and SMB and iSCSI going through a router is just going to slow them down by a massive amount, especially when you're talking about these enterprise deployments where you want to be able to run all these massive virtual machines. And because of that fact, I think it's a very important thing to be able to write firewall rules and block out stuff from other segments of the network. You can do so much stuff with a firewall rule in the exact way you're allowing people to access from specific IP addresses that I really think would bring a lot to the table here. Especially, it's based on Linux. You can grab UFW really easily and just start implementing it. And I'm pretty sure that's all Synology's done here with this firewall rule. Now, can you do everything? Yes, but I still really think that there's a lot more stuff that can be done there to make this easier overall. So that's number 3, a firewall. Really would like to see it happen. All right, so now on to number 4, and that is going to be ability to set up and manage snapshots and replications. And I will say that TrueNAS is pretty good about your snapshots, but where they really lose out and just get killed is the replications that Synology is set up, which is just so easy. Now note, Synology will only replicate to another Synology, whereas TrueNAS you can set up to replicate to any ZFS box, assuming it's got the proper permissions and the proper version of ZFS. But let's look at the capability that Synology has when it comes to snapshot replication, and the ability to switch over and fail over and all those things is just so powerful. So we're going to go into our replication over here, and we can just create a new replication task. And it is so easy to set this up. You've got a great schedule right here. It's really easy to use. It's really easy to manage. And your replication just is simple. There's a few pieces here that make it so great. One, the cleanup script that they've got for ability to have a very easy way of storing versions of files is huge. So if we look at our snapshot schedules right here, we can go into our settings and look at our retention rules. And this is where you have so much flexibility that makes doing this on TrueNAS incredibly difficult, because we can just say exactly what we want. All of our snapshots for 7 days, hourlies for 24 hours, whatever we want to do, we can do right here really easily. With TrueNAS, you only have the ability to prune your schedule. What that means is right here, this is our periodic snapshot task. What you do is you actually set another task for every single storage you'd like. So right here, I've got an hourly one that goes for 3 days. And then for that same pool, I have a daily one that goes for 4 days, which means it's got an entirely separate schedule and has to add an entirely different piece in here if you want to be able to have a custom lifecycle, which I think is very, very, very valuable. You want to store your extra versions up front and then have fewer versions down the line, not just for performance and overall data use, but also just for ease of use and to keep from going down the weeds and having a directory with 8 million objects in it. Another huge piece here is just the ability to easily fail over and switch over. So we've got this replication going on right now. We'll go ahead and let this finish, should be done in a minute here. And Synology has a phenomenal ability to do a simple switchover. This is where it works great. If you've got another Synology, or even if you're replicating locally, it is incredibly easy to have it set up automatically as read only and setting these same settings here. So let's go ahead and say, all right, let's go ahead and do a recovery menu and just say switchover. And what this is going to do is it's going to do everything for you. It's going to make the original destination, the backup, read write. And it's going to make the original master, the actual source, read only. And it's going to flip their schedule around so it keeps working incredibly easily. This is something that is going to reduce the chance of messing something up. It is going to make this so easy overall. And so right now it's processing. And what's going to happen is when this is done, we're going to find that the -1, which used to be the read-only copy, is now going to be read-write. And this works not only on the same NAS, but also across multiple NASs. And this is a great feature. This is a phenomenal selling point as a true easy way to back up and recover, because I love being able to fail over to a second unit and then just have your DNS records updated so all your users are just now pointing at a new device. How great is that? It makes it so easy for your users to all of a sudden be talking to a new server without you having to do anything on their specific devices. All you do is just you do a failover or a switchover, and you update your DNS records, and boom, everybody's set up to the new one really quickly and easily and low error prone. When you've got to do this on TrueNAS, you do have that ability to have it as a read-only secondary, but your replication is so much more complicated. You have to do a bunch of pieces here. You need to make sure that when you're doing a switchover, you delete the task, and then you switch this to require. So that way you make sure that it's read-only. That way it doesn't accidentally, when your main comes back online, it doesn't overwrite all the good work that people have been doing on what was the backup that is now the active file server. So you have to make sure to have require set on there. Then to get the data back over, it's a huge mess. And there's a bunch of pieces there that make it so much more error prone and difficult to set up, which I really wish they would just simplify down. I think they're close, but I really wish they had like a wizard or something that would just kind of handle that all for you if you're going from one TrueNAS box to another, and have the ability for it to just literally switch on over. Have it automatically set the other one to read write at the end, and then the active one is read only, and then send one snapshot on over. It's a great way to do a switchover, a failover, or to test it. Really, really, really wish that was built in here, because I think there's a lot of value to be had. Now, once again, I will say, you can see right here, there's so much more capability in what you do. There's a lot of stuff you can do, which is very powerful for enterprise stuff, but has its downsides as well. You will also notice that to actually run this replication, it's actually based off of a periodic snapshot that then triggers it, which makes it kind of difficult to manage, because you'll see right here, there's no schedule right here. There's not a schedule that I actually put in here. Instead, if I want to edit the schedule, I have to edit the periodic snapshot task, which I think adds confusion to setting these things up. And so that was number 4. I really think cleaning up that snapshot and building a pretty wizard that can just make these failovers such less error prone would be really, really, really valuable, especially for your enterprise customers who want to be able to have a very quick, true failover to a secondary system that will have a low chance of the IT person messing up. You don't want a slight misconfiguration here to cause, whenever the main one comes back online, to overwrite all the work people have been doing for the last couple of weeks. And now you've just got this confusing system where the entire thing goes down. Instead, you want it to make sure that there's a true switchover process there. And I think that it's close, but there's a few things that just make it so much more complicated to do. Finally, number 5 is the lack of a file interface within TrueNAS Scale is really tough, specifically for shared folder permissions. Setting up permissions within a actual SMB dataset is incredibly hard if you are a macOS only system, because SMB is a Windows protocol, though macOS can read it. But what they cannot do is macOS cannot modify this, and I don't believe Linux can either. So trying to set up the ability to actually switch this stuff on over and have the ability to say, okay, this person has access to this folder, but not this folder, is incredibly easy on Synology. So right here, we can go in and we've got a full file menu right here. Go into our properties and we can look at our permissions. And we can customize them however we would like to right here. Really, really, really easily for permissions. And it also gives the ability to download these files, which means that if the administrator needs to be able to fix something and move something around and restore a backup or anything like that, they can do it right from the interface, which I think is really valuable, especially if people accidentally delete something or save over something or anything like that. Being able to do it within the interface is just great. It makes it really easy to do all this stuff on over. And I think overall it causes people to be less error prone because it allows you to restore your snapshots and specific stuff straight from the UI. And that also means that you don't have to type in everything on SSH and hope that you didn't accidentally typo something and now boom, you moved the wrong folder to the wrong place. And it's something that happens. People make mistakes when they have to do stuff command line. I'm somebody who's very comfortable popping into command line, but I always have to take a lot more time to be careful that I'm moving it to the right place because you just can't see it. You can't just go, hey, wait, that's not the right folder. It should be over here. Instead, you have to go through and open up a new tab and check out things there. So for both permissions, moving files, and everything like that, I think having a UI with a built-in file system would be really a cherry on top here because it would allow you to manage your advanced permissions and administer the file system significantly better. All right, well, that's it for my list. I really love TrueNAS Scale, and I think it's got phenomenal performance and scalability, but I just think there's some things from somebody who uses Synology all the time that Synology just does better that makes this so much easier to administer, especially when you're really looking at these massive file systems and having an entire IT division being able to manage them. There's a lot of stuff there that can make it so much safer to do your replications and really control stuff in a lot easier of a fashion. All right, well, that's going to be it for this. Go and leave your favorite things about Synology or TrueNAS down in the comments below. And if you want to hire me for a project, there's a link for that down in the description below. All right, have a good one. Bye.